Okay, so what am I working on today? I wanted to do some traces in Scroll 4. I made some new surface predictions overnight last night on Scroll 4 with a new model. The difference between this one and a lot of my previous ones was I used the new data set that I had created, and I also used a new loss. Jordy implemented a loss that changes the way the skeletonization works to do a medial axis rather than the standard 3D segmentation or standard 3D skeletonization, which doesn't really work that well for planes. Hey, David. So I was hoping to do some surface traces on that today, but it's not going to work out. I didn't get the segmentations back until a little bit later, and then I've got to seed the volume, which I'm doing right now. Which is this right here. Let me get that volume up so I can show it. Just a second. So I'm just going to open it in Apari. You can use a lot of different things, but when I'm just looking at something very quickly, I like to use Napari, and you can just drag a ZAR into Napari by dragging the folder. But this is the new one. In my estimation, it looks quite good. I actually haven't overlaid my old one with it yet, which I should do. Convert it to labels. Give it some other color. And then this is the old one, which I'll also turn into labels. Oh, that's the problem. That one is not. So the issue here, I had talked about this in the Discord the other day. For the lower resolutions, I didn't use I used the mean algorithm for the downsampling, which means that for the exterior pixels, they took a average of the pixels around them, which if your only values are 255 and 0, the average of this pixel and that pixel is 125, which that value shouldn't exist anywhere in my data. So let me fix that quick. Open another terminal. And this is just a script that Chuck wrote, available in his cards repository. And I'm going to use the rebuild flag for this, which will allow me to rebuild it pretty quickly. I'm just going to call it fixed. Oh, that's right, I got to use the same one. And this should go pretty quick because we don't have to do anything with the first level. The first level of the array is already created. But I need to do this to be able to visualize it. And then I'll re-upload the fixed one. What I'm going to try to figure out is if I overlay the old one on top of the new one, I should be able to see areas where we have nothing in the old one, or bad data in the old one, and good data in the new one. The new one still has some errors. There's still some obvious spots like this here that have merging, but overall that's not usually too big of an issue. So we'll look through that. And then the other thing I'm doing today is I have trained all of these models using a patch size of 192, and so I'm going through and creating. I'm curious to see, like, what the difference will be if I give it a much larger patch size. The reason for that is that the context area that the model can see is should be pretty impactful to how well it works. And I trained models using relatively large patch sizes before, but it's been a very long time since I've done that, and those were created using pretty poor labels. So I want to see if I give it a bigger window, if it'll improve performance at all. I think it will, but that comes with some computational costs. But at the end of the day, if it works better, it's worth it. So I have to remake all those labels that I made the other day. I already went through all of scroll 1. Now I'm currently going through all of scroll 4 to just cut out regions of 320 cubed that are decent labels. And hopefully we'll be able to do some tracing. Probably not in the office hours today though. But I'll be doing some tracing once this gets to about 1,000. Then I'm going to expand the seeds to about 10,000 or so, which should take a greater chunk of the day, and then I can run some traces later. Okay, that should be done rebuilding. And there we go, that's what we expect to see. So if I zoom in, I want to go the other way actually, because then we can see areas that are missing. So anywhere we see blue means the old one had nothing. A better way to look at it is probably actually to slice it along the X or the Y axis. And where I'm primarily expecting to see a big difference is towards the outside, and then in a couple spots in the middle. My scroll 4 models are already pretty good, so I'm not expecting to see a substantial difference, but this area here in the middle, let's see what happens if I just hide these. I just show that one. And it's still behaving a little strange for some reason. What if I change? That's okay. So it's not a substantial difference. We're still missing a couple spots. But we do get more. We get a connection here, which is good. I want to look at this Z layer right about here. This spot towards the middle of the scroll on scroll 4, and then this spot towards the bottom. It kind of like rotates around itself in like it makes like almost like a little ball in the center of the scroll. And it's proven to be a spot that is very difficult to get through with the tracer. So I'm going to see, where is that spot? Right around here is the spot that I've had a lot of trouble with. So we get some more along the edge there, up here too. It's not a huge difference. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more, but like I said, my previous scroll 4 model was actually pretty good, so I'm not too surprised by it. But I would have liked to see a little bit bigger of a change, obviously. But I mean, when you look at this, it's not terrible already. This is the new one. Let's see the old one. Yeah, there's another connection. And every one of those makes a big difference. The tracer doesn't do a great job of connecting disconnected lines. It does okay, but it has a tendency with missed connections to either connect to the wrong one or just stop. This is another spot I kind of want to check out. So if we look at here, and it's tough to see because of the reason. I'm surprised. I don't really know why my other one is doing this. It shouldn't be giving me these other colors here, so it's kind of hard to see, but this spot looks much better. This is actually basically a solid merge, and if I look at it on here, it's much more separated, and so that will make a difference as well. Even that little degree of separation there makes a big difference for the tracer. Again, you wouldn't think it would, but the areas that it has trouble are not huge, and every improvement to those regions makes a pretty big difference. Let's see, this is another one right here where this is like basically just a solid block. And we get a little bit of separation here, but not substantially. We do get these separated, which is nice. So we'll see how this one goes. In the meantime, I'm going to kind of keep chugging through these. I have another scroll for prediction actually that just finished, so let me upload that one. And that was the DA5. And we'll rebuild that one too. I'm just uploading this from my, I got an AWS instance running right now. Where is that? It is, should be DLOM SV, S4DA5, that's called. Perfect. And we can just rebuild this one too. Actually, that's probably a more fun thing to look at as well, the differences between these two. I don't know yet which model will be better, and Scroll 4 is a tough one to even look at anyways because there isn't, models are almost, there's not a lot of like room to be gained there in performance. I think wait for that to finish and pick up a couple more patches here. Then we run another training session, so we'll have trained over the last 5 days. By the end of today, I'll probably have trained 10 models over the last 5 days, and then I've got to go through all of them and determine which ones are the right ones and the ones that I want to keep pushing with and actually run inference on all the scrolls with, and which ones I don't think are worth spending the money for. I mean, theoretically, I could take every single one of the models and ensemble every single one of them, and I probably would have theoretically a slightly more performant model, like overall model, but there's also a limit on that where although some are better in some areas, they're also worse in some areas, and so by combining all of them, you're also combining their mistakes, and that can be a little bit problematic, because eventually, if they all make mistakes in different areas, you're combining mistakes from everywhere, which I don't want. So I try to take models that make mistakes in the same areas, and not make mistakes in the same areas, but I want, if I'm going to merge a model with another one, I would rather that it is like less confident in areas where it would make mistakes, and then it just is a little bit better in areas where one of them makes mistakes. So it's not like oversaturating the entire volume with bad areas. And I'll show, it'll be a little bit easier to show what that means in a second. So this model that I showed just a little bit ago is one that tries to preserve connectivity very, very strongly. And the other one that I'm going to use here does not use a loss like that, just uses dice and cross entropy. And so what happens is it doesn't connect everything as well, and it's a lot less confident in those areas, which is good because its areas of low confidence are, if I were to like take a lower threshold of like 50% confidence, it would just look like a giant block, and we don't want that. So let's make this one. Where did that go? There. This should only take a couple minutes to recombine, but while that runs, we'll go check out some more labels. And I talked about this in a different office hour, but that one wasn't recorded, so I'll just talk about it again here. What I'm just going through is I'm iterating through every single labeled region within scroll 4 in increments of patch size, so 320 by 320 by 320, and then a minimum label percentage. So I'm checking to see if that patch will contain at least 2% labels, and started from the minimum Z level of 350. You don't have to set all those, but this is available in the Villa repository under segmentation and data set creation. But I'm iterating through all those, and these are manually segmented lines. So they were created using Volume Cartographer, and then they were single OBJs of a bunch of different segments, which Richie merged into a merged OBJ, and then I just voxelized that into a ZAR volume. And I'm just grabbing a chunk from the ZAR volume of the raw data, a chunk from the ZAR volume of the label data, and then just seeing if the labels are good. This is one I'll skip because I don't really like that. Now, it's not necessarily horrible if I look at it in this plane, but I'm trying to keep this data set pretty clean. And this one's off for enough of a time that I don't particularly love it. So we'll skip that one. But I'm checking to see if the label both sticks tight to the surface, and then that it doesn't intersect with another sheet or merge or break like this one does. This is just a result of the merging process where they take the multiple OBJs and make them into one. You get some artifacts like this because it's not really, it's very difficult to merge them perfectly. But the reason I'm taking these merged ones rather than individual ones is where this exists, where you get this kind of break here, it used to overlap for a pretty considerable amount of time. And if you have an overlap, it's hard to train the model to just give you one sheet here and not ever merge them when most of your labels contain an overlap or a merge. I'll take this one. This isn't perfect, but we're probably going to take that because it's not terrible. I just want to make sure it doesn't. Yeah, it does. So I'm not going to take this one. And the reason for that is because it actually intersects the sheet behind it, and I don't want to teach the model that if it doesn't know what to do, it should just go on to the next sheet. I don't want the model to do that, so we'll skip that one. Pretty good. Just want to make sure no touching. We should have, okay, that's done. So now what we're going to do is take this single resolution ZAR and turn it into a multi-resolution ZAR. find some more labels while that runs. I don't want that one because it touches. I'm 3,000 slices up in scroll 4 right now, so I'm a third of the way there maybe. There's another one of those breaks. We get those sometimes. So I'm not taking this one because there isn't a label here, and I don't want to crop that out or create an ignore label or anything. So I'm just ignoring anything that's missing labels. So this one is missing a label down here. I'm gonna get enough data overall anyways. I think right now I have from scroll 1 I have 343 cubes of 320, which my other ones were 192, so I'm going to end up probably with about 60% of the training data, which might not be a bad thing necessarily. A lot of the training data looks the same, to be honest with you. All of these cubes aren't really necessary, and if you were looking for, like, if we were doing this with a focus on performance in train time, we could do an analysis to find out, like, what are the cubes that we need, and you can do that by, like, figuring out the confidence scores of the model, and then seeing, like, what cubes contribute the most to training and which ones don't contribute at all. And you could theoretically rip out probably like 85% of these train cubes, because they're just reiterating data that the model is already good at, and they don't really contribute to it becoming better. But I don't know which cubes those are right now, so I just take all of them. But you could theoretically train a lot faster if we did some kind of analysis like that. This one I'm actually probably going to keep because it disconnects for a while and then reconnects, which I actually want to teach the model. I do want to teach the model this, if it sees a break like this, to keep going, because that is the right one. So we'll keep that label, even though initially it doesn't look good. Yeah, that's another one that crosses into the sheet adjacent to it, so I don't want that one. Looks like it's done, so we should be able now to see which of these is better in what spots. See, that's what I was expecting to see, single color. With this one overlaid over the other one, I can basically just go through and say, hey, anywhere there isn't red, but there is blue, we know it's better there, which is quite a few spots really on this one. The other one that we were looking at before was an ensemble of 4 different models. But the nice thing about these other ones versus the skeleton one is like in certain areas, like in this area up here on the top right, it doesn't merge them in the same way, and that's nice to have. I'm going to actually flip these now and see, is there anywhere where the skeleton one does not get that the other one does. And those areas don't look very frequent, but we'll pan through the layers a little bit. They don't look frequent, and they look like they're in places that actually I don't want. Like this up here on the top, that red line there, there's no sheet there, so. So at least in scroll 4, well, we get a little bit right here. Let's look at it in one different plane now. So we do get a little bit. It's not substantial, but that spot is a spot that I've struggled with in my other models, so it might be helpful. Just trying to see how frequent those are. It doesn't introduce a ton of noise, and so I might just throw this one in because it does get some spots that are out. I'm very curious why. I actually don't think that this is real, because it's a solid line, and there, I think that's a artifact from the way this is being rendered, because there shouldn't be any reason I would have a solid missing block there. They both inferred on the same data. I wonder if I just let me figure out what Z level that is real quick. Yeah, sure enough. I wonder if when I recombine these, if I missed a block. Okay, something to look for, but that's a good reason why you should always look at your data. So what I'm going to just keep doing now is going through these for a little while longer. I'm going to check on this periodically. I want this to get to about, I don't know, 750 or 1,000. We can kind of check where it's at right now. This is just the seeding stage of the, actually I don't want to close that, of the tracer process, so it isn't, they don't have overlap information or cost information. So these aren't the ones that'll be directly used for the seeds, so I don't want to run this for too long. Seems like my headset shut off. There we go. Just gotta find my command for that quick. I'm just gonna check how densely seeded it is at this point. And also, actually, this would be a good opportunity to check if that like giant missing block exists in the predictions on here, or if it's just an Apari artifact. hopefully it's just an Ampari artifact. So that's the top. It should be. What Z layer was that at? If I looked at it here. So the flatter part. Trying to find where this is in this volume. There's not an easy way to scroll through the volumes that I'm aware of in VC3D. So I've got to kind of find like where this exists and then click on that spot and then move it around in the Z-plane. Which I think... is towards this right here. Let's see, we are at 1521. Okay, so I went the wrong. No, I went the right direction. 87, 65, and we want to be at 87. Or 7521. Let's see what this is. 7609. So right about here. We should be able to see it then if we're at 7413. 7521. So we need to go up just a touch. I don't see it there. I'm at 75, 74. If I go to 75, 74 on this one, I guess I can find out. No, it's gone on that. So it's very brief. So 65. It's kind of a painstaking. Oh, there it is. Sure enough. Okay, so I'm going to stop that. And I will just merge those R's. It's a good thing I went through that now. Oh, dang it, I wrote to the wrong area. That's okay. Predictions. S4, distance C, S4. So it shouldn't be here when it's done. Shouldn't take too long. Then I'll have to convert that one to OME as well. Okay, that's done. And then I'm just going to open that one in Apari as well, just to make sure that that actually worked properly, which it should have, but the other one should have too. Then we can go to 7,500. I have this big block here because I went through, this isn't going to have too much of an impact at the end of it, but the reason that exists is because, and the reason some of these chunks exist is because I deleted a lot of blocks in scroll 4 that didn't contain any image data, and some of them I got a little bit too aggressive with, but the reason for that is because like 60% of the scroll volume data was just air or case, and all of that, each one of these blocks takes like 2 minutes to infer, and I deleted, I don't know, 900 of them, and so overall that ends up being a pretty significant amount of time saved that I don't have to deal with anymore. I do get this kind of thing on the outside though, so I might have to fix that at some point, but right now for our purposes in terms of like figuring out whether I can unroll all of this or not, this isn't going to make or break anything. If I get to the outside and I have a perfectly unrolled scroll 4 and it just gets stopped at those, I'll just run inference on blocks that include all of them. I just saw your question, David. Were you talking about the one that I was looking at where it was missing that huge block? Or was it in one of these cubes I'm going through now? Because yeah, the Colesis on scroll 4 is gigantic, and it could have been that. At least in a lot of spots, the Colesis on scroll 4 are gigantic. If I find one again, I'll stop. Gotta adjust my camera just a little bit there. That might have been too much. That might be a Colesis there. It's unlabeled. No, that's not. Thought for a second. And a Colesis is a spot where the two sheets, so the papyrus scrolls are created by taking cut rectangular squarish sheets of papyrus and overlapping them some amount, and each one of those is called a kolema, and then they're overlapped, and then I think they're glued together, and that overlap area is called the colesis. And they show up in the scans. Typically, you can find them by finding like two essentially overlapping. This might be one here. No, it's a single vertical. You can usually find them because the verticals here will be like touching each other. They'll be kind of like put together, and then you can see if you go into this plane, the horizontals will be kind of like smashed together. Also, they're twice as thick, but they are a challenge. Let's see if I can find one. They're usually pretty easily identifiable. is it? Nope. Oh yeah, I need to, so I made that merged ZAR. Now I need to convert that to an OME, and then I need to upload that. But I need to move it first. Thankfully, the labels or predictions in ZAR format don't take up a lot of room, because as you can see, I end up with a significant amount of them. I need to stop that. I'm just stopping the seeding because I'm going to replace the volume that's currently being seeded with a different one. I don't have to restart it, thankfully. Hey, Forrest. We're just going through, putting together the predictions again from some Scroll 4 predictions I ran yesterday on a new model. I noticed a area where I must have merged the blocks improperly or something, so I had to go back and fix that. And then I'm also cutting larger patch chunks out so that I can train a model with a much higher patch size, for the reasons I was showing yesterday, where when I zoomed in to about a patch size on a lot of areas in Scroll 5, you couldn't hardly distinguish anything. The patch size was, the whole area around that patch was so noisy that the whole patch was essentially just noise. So I'm hoping maybe a larger context window can help that. But we will see. I also haven't ran the new model yet on Scroll 5, so maybe it's already a solved problem. Might work. No, not in the back. Alright, that's done now, so I've got to place that in my volumes directory under my volume package for Scroll 4, which I'll do right now, and then we'll restart the seeds. I'm going to just take that one out. I'm going to grab the meta.json from it though. And then I'm going to modify the name to reflect what it actually is. And then we can restart the seeds, but I am going to just double check quick, as you'll realize I do frequently, that everything looks right if I load it up into VC3D, because it might not. And I don't want to run this seed for, 2 full days and then find out that the data that I was giving it was bad. Alright, that all looks good. Okay, so I'll restart the seeds now. Although I think I changed the name. I did, but I need to change it to. The only reason I'm going to call it the same thing here is because I don't want to change the command, and also the volume that it is derived from is stored as metadata in the patches, and I don't want to have to go through and modify it. You can, it's not that difficult, but I just don't feel like doing it right now. S4059 media only. Okay. There we go. So now we're running seeds again. When I run seeds, I put a command like this here, which just every 1 second it refreshes. It just runs an ls command and then counts the number of words in it, and then pipes it out here. So I'm just checking how many patches I have there. I'll stop it if it gets to like 1,000 probably, and then just do the expansion step. And I did finish a guide for VC3D yesterday, which I'll have uploaded to the site. It should be live on the site. Hopefully later today. I just gotta have a couple people take a spin through it quick. Oh sweet, yeah, that'll be awesome if you get some training running. You can do it with a 4060 even, absolutely. You can just do smaller patch sizes. And it'll work just fine. You could probably get away with a patch size of like 128. Yeah, it's okay to have multiple different sizes in an NUnet, but I think I'm going to make another version of these where everything is the same size, and I might just scale some of them up or scale some of them down. Ideally, they'd all be the same size, because although NNUnet is robust to different patch sizes and input sizes, a significant amount of models aren't. Yeah, there is. I mean, I call them different things, but no, a patch size is, well, a patch size and a window size are kind of the same thing, in the sense that, like, you have a sliding window, and so your patch size is, say, 128, and then say you slide over 50% of your patch size, that would be your step or your stride or whatever, and then you perform another check of patch size. So there is a difference, yeah, but the window that it's looking at is of the patch size. So I guess yes and no. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Window size. I shouldn't say window size. Honestly, a lot of the confusion there is my own fault. I kind of interchange words that I shouldn't. But NNUnet can handle the different patch sizes. So if you're using that, you're fine. If you're using something else, I would potentially look into cropping the larger ones to be the same size as the small one, or upscaling or upsizing the small ones to be the same size as some of the larger ones. My next data set won't be like that, and I might even just redo this entire data set to have uniform sizes and just have a couple different options of patch sizes. What are we at? 4100. This is the scroll 5 stuff right here. Scroll 4 stuff that looks like Crackle, and in Z even, that's exactly what Crackle looks like. But it is not Crackle. It's that weird like plate-like surface in scroll 5 or scroll 4. It might be ink, but we haven't been able to definitively determine that or not. It's weird to me if it is not something that is already on the papyrus. I don't think it's like mud or occlusions from the eruption, because it sticks so tightly to the surface. Like, it's not like if it were all in this void, I would expect that, but it isn't. It sticks right on the surface of it. So I think it's something, either something that happened to the papyrus when it heated up, or something that was on it beforehand. I'm not really sure, but I don't think it's dirt or mud. If it is ink, it's extremely hard to tell why it looks so different. It's super thick. Yep, this is scroll 4. That texture is present, though, on other scrolls. It's present on 3 in some places, and it's present on 5 in some places. And actually even 1, just very rarely. 4 is the only one that, like, it's, like, everywhere on scroll 4. At first, I thought it was likely just scroll 4 went through a process called the Oslo process, where they soaked the scroll in some kind of acid, I believe. I think it was vinegar or some kind of acid, and like broke fragments off of it. And at first I thought maybe it was a result of that, but given that it's in 5 and also 1, which I don't think went through that process, I don't think it is that. But that was my theory for a long time. Yeah, that would be pretty cool if there was paint on them or something like that. I mean, they've got diagrams, yeah. I am going to absolutely butcher this, so I'm not even going to try to say it, but one of the Oxy, hopefully it'll save me. One of these has a, right there, it has a diagram from Euclid's Elements, so they do exist. I don't know how frequently they exist. This was found in Egypt at like a trash dump, and Oxford has like so much stuff from there, and they look fantastic and they look incredible. But yeah, I mean, there is some, so I guess I don't see, here's like another drawing, right, that they found on one of those, so maybe we have a whole scroll full of drawings. I don't know how often that would be. That would be a question maybe better suited for, I could see if I can ask one of the papyrologists. But I guess I don't really see why not. It is a, I mean, the working theory is that it's a library, at least what we have so far, mostly comprised of philosophical works, so I don't know that it would have that, but I guess we don't really know for certain. Hopefully we can dig it up and find out. personally, I don't subscribe to like the idea that like anything is impossible. So for me, I'll just say that it is possible. Would our ink detection method to deal with it? Yeah, absolutely. If it's ink in the same, if it presents itself in the same way as letter ink does, if it's made of the same kind of ink, or it crackles, like the ink that we've come to find looks like, then yeah, I mean, our method should work for all kinds of ink that are of the same type as the ink that we find right now. We don't know if it's of like a dramatically different type of ink or made of paint or something that we have never seen before or never trained a model on before, then currently it probably wouldn't detect it. But if it's made of a similar kind or similar composition and it deforms and is like destroyed in the same way as the letter ink is, then it should have no problem with it. Because we're not looking for, like, the model doesn't know what a letter looks like, so it wouldn't be thrown off by like a stick figure. It doesn't know, oh, that's not a letter, I'm not going to mark that. Should be all the way through scroll 4 here within the next like hour or so. For us, I can upload this data set to you right away. This data set will be all cubes that are 320 by 320 by 320, and if you wanted to, you could just cut them in half or thirds or something like that, which would get you a more uniform size if you wanted that for something else. But otherwise, you could use the data set that exists there already and just scale them up or down, or leave them as is. You can run them as they are through Edit Unit. I am going to try with this training 2 different normalization schemes though. Yeah, so this stuff right here is like also what makes me curious, right? This is on the back of the sheet. This little cup right here. I made my cursor bigger, so hopefully you can see it now. So like if that is, and that's what ink looks like. If it were to be ink, that's the back of the sheet. But I don't think that we have any, at least as far as I'm aware, I don't believe that we have any Herculaneum papyri that have writing on the back of the sheet, so that would be pretty surprising. I think I just skipped a Colima right there. Recolesis. Hello? My headset just turned off again. Right now we're just going through patches again, as I was doing the other day, looking for new cube sizes. So doing that, and then running seeds on new scroll 4, and hopefully get some traces done later today. I'm hoping I can find, I want to show a Colesis, and this might be one here, but I want to find a good one. Yeah, I think that is one actually. hard to stay still. This is one for sure, right here. So this is the one that you can see. It's got, hopefully you can see my cursor, but there's two, you can see the two verticals here, and it's double thick. So that's how you know there's two stacked on top of each other. If you see two sets of verticals like this, it's definitely either a colesis or I've missed a label, but I think this is a colesis. And so this is the overlap between two sheets. And you can see it's very, very thick. Usually on the colesis, these can separate, and that makes it kind of hard for models, but usually they stick together pretty good, and the model's able to identify them. But they happen every, like, in this scroll, in scroll 4, I think they're like every, I think it was like 14 centimeters. I can't remember. I sent some measurements in the summer at some point, but I don't remember what the exact number was. But there's a relatively regular size to the colima themselves, and so you can kind of expect one of those every so often. They're pretty easy to find. You can see them in the flattened ones too. Why don't I pull that up too while I'm on this one, just so other people know what they look like. Stud virtual void. I'm just going to sort these by larger ones. They're pretty easy to see in large segments. Let's see, 4424. And if we zoom in, that's one right there. So they look like this. You can find it pretty easily if you look for the where like a fiber goes and then stops suddenly. It's not always immediately identifiable, because sometimes there are areas like this where this one sort of continues, but that's because we're not really looking at, this is a density measurement, so it has some opacity to it, and then when you flatten it, you do kind of see some overlapping stuff. But there's one, this is one in scroll 1. They're pretty easy to find usually, because they have a pretty distinct look. Sometimes they're more difficult to find, but that one's pretty distinct. And this is a really good segment, which helps. There's another colesis there. This is something kind of unique to scroll 4. You get this like almost like paper, pulpy texture at a lot of these colesis, and it makes it really hard to segment. Because a lot of the time you'll have like I just showed a little bit ago, where you've got that like thick paper pulpy texture, and then you go over a little bit, and then you get this where it breaks off the back, and now it looks like a different one. It's difficult, but that's why we need to auto segment them, so nobody has to stare at scroll 4 for 500 hours and go, is that a segment, or is that a sheet, or is it a colesis? I don't know, for a significant amount of time. I'm just going to check how well seeded this one is now. Expand. So this is going, this seed run is going very well, because scroll 4 is relatively decently segmented, not by, well, yes, by human, but also the model performs very well on it. So my seeds are gigantic. Usually you have to run, like in scroll 5, I had to run this till I had like 3,000 seeds, but in scroll 4 now, my seed patches are so big because the segment is relatively, or the segmentation is relatively good. I probably didn't even need anywhere near as many as I made. Medial cache is what I called it. So I'm just going to switch the mode. The seed doesn't store. There's different modes here. So if you run it on mode seed, it doesn't store the overlap information, and so you can't run a trace directly on seed. So even though that was running relatively decently, I need to switch it to expansion mode so it can calculate that overlap data. Which, just want to make sure I've got all my stuff right here. Yeah, perfect. So we'll run that for a while. This one had 872 seeds, and it was pretty dense. Look at that, a perfect segmentation of the scroll case. Can't ask for much better than that. But yeah, this one's pretty dense already. But we want this whole thing to be lit up completely. This is 600, or what was it, 671? 875. My scroll 1 seed run has 68,000. So you can see how the difference between quality of the segmentation and then overall scroll size can very heavily influence the actual amount of seeding you need to do and how long that can take. This one might not even take much more than a few more hours, which would be awesome. I'd like to get some new scroll 4 traces out. Really want to find ink in scroll 4. Probably gonna skip this one. Skip that one. Let's see how many we got now. I think I'm up to yeah, 93. So between 93 and my scroll 4, I've got 436 volumes so far, which is still a pretty decent size, considering that the patch size is so much larger than the other one. I was worried that it wasn't going to have enough training data because it is kind of hard to find areas that are 320 by 320 by 320 that are densely labeled, where every single fiber is still labeled. But I was able to find enough. Kind of curious how big I can go. You know, if I went to 512, how many volumes of that size could I find without having to resort to masking? But 512 would be a huge 3D volume to run machine learning models on, at least. It's not a huge 3D volume to look at, but it's a huge 3D volume in terms of what it's going to do for VRAM requirements. I wouldn't be able to run it on my computer at home at all, which isn't the end of the world, but I do like being able to run them at home. Yeah, skipping that one. It's not going to work. It's so bright right here. There's like a little scan artifact in the top left there. This was yesterday. Somebody was asking me about how different slices have different brightnesses, and that's a good example of it. Different slices, different regions. That one got brighter as I went up in Z. Some get darker as you go up. It just depends on what's happening around the surface at that spot. But the scans do not have uniform brightness everywhere, and so adding that as an augmentation at least seems to help. I guess I shouldn't even call it brightness in a CT scan. It's called intensity. I think I'm gonna stick with that one. In this one too, you can see as we go down, in certain areas it's darker. Here's some like really nice like lines that come off the beam that you can see kind of run through the volume like that. Look like little like streamlines kind of. I wonder, let me see. I've been trying to get a good example of where the front of the sheet looks different than the back of the sheet by eye, and it's not great in any of the lower resolution volumes. You can kind of see that the front of the sheet is brighter than the back of the sheet, but it's difficult to see on the lower res ones. On the high res ones, it's very obvious, especially the scroll 3 high res one. Why do we not have anything there? Yeah, look at how thick that one is. This is a cool looking one right here. But that's one sheet. Well, it's two actually. It's Khaleesi's, but it's so thick, and it looks like it would be like 10 sheets in one. So I'm sure when David segmented this part, he probably did not enjoy it. That would be very confusing. Skip that one. Yeah, I can imagine. There's so much spots in scroll. So when you guys first released all those segments, you know, like back to back to back for scroll 4, I was going through a lot of them in Cartas, just kind of looking at like the segmentation line and just seeing like in certain spots where I thought maybe there was ink, what that looked like in 3D. And for a while, you know, just looking at them, I was like, they missed a sheet or something here, you know. It looks so much like another sheet, but no, it's not. It is one single sheet. So I can imagine that would be a huge struggle. Thankfully, scroll 4 isn't that big, so we didn't have to do too much of them. I'm like looking to find merges, but there's like 3 entire fibers that aren't labeled in that one, so I don't have to take that one at all. The hardest part of doing this, because obviously it doesn't take a huge degree of skill to just look through labels, is staying focused enough to not add this, you know. I did in my last one, and then I went through them. I went through all my labels like twice after I went through them with this Nipari thing, and every single time I do that, I find one that I added that I shouldn't have. But you just get like a level of like mental fatigue just tabbing through these volumes for 20 hours. But it has to be done. Look at this one, like, kind of curls around itself right there. That's strange. I wonder if that is if that's like adicolesis, if they fold them over each other, like at the end. I'd have to see if there's some like evidence for that or something. I'm gonna save this cube and send it to someone, because it's clearly folded. That's not a fiber. I mean, this would be a really small fold though, like an insanely small fold. Maybe it's just weird. Well, I'm gonna save that one anyways. I wonder what that is. Very descriptive name there, weird fold. We'll check out our expansion or seeds in scroll 4 in a second, and the volume we're running. I just check on it periodically. It's not anywhere near being done yet, but I just like to look at it because it has a bunch of cool colors, and it gets me excited to run traces. Should have a scroll 3 volume done too. I'm running inference on scroll 3 on my local PC right now, and that will take a little bit longer. But once that's done, I'm going to start seeding scroll 3 as well. So hopefully here in the next 2 or 3 days, we can have some much larger and more accurate segmentations of scroll 3 and 4 to help with ink detection. this one doesn't have any touching. You don't get a lot of this in scroll 4 where you get really close lines like that, so hoping we don't get any errors in this one so that I can actually use this cube. Yeah, we can't because of this. Damn. Maybe this one though. There's that fold again. This. So this is a spot you can already see where the 320 patch size begins to kind of limit what I can do, where I've got to skip probably 75% of patches that have labels in them, just because they're not densely annotated. So it's just a trade-off of, does the larger context help the model more than a less diverse data set and a less full data set, much smaller. Also going to do something different with these. I'm going to pre-compute all of my rotations and all of my flips and grid deformations, because those are the most expensive augmentations and I don't really want to pay for it on train time. I'd rather just pay for it once, and then I don't have to do it anymore. Then all my training runs should go much faster. Look at that, bright. So there's something fun over there. Wow. That's the hardest beam hardening artifact I think I've seen anywhere. Is like black. I actually want to write down where this is too. Where am I right now? I am at 67, 22, 40, 640. Could be a larger ring artifact, yeah. It is hard to tell with the smaller thing, and I can't move. I don't have this designed in a way where I can like just say like tab up one block or something like that. I never even noticed that when I did these before somehow. I've probably seen it and it just didn't look as dramatic when you could see the full ring artifact. I always think it's kind of fun though when you can see them, like if you watch like the tail end of this little like vertical fiber here, just watch like the stream off it of the particles. You can see how everything moves. Like I assume that's what that is. It's like a place where they're not penetrating or something to that effect, but it's fun to watch them occasionally. Yeah, it must be a ring artifact because there's another part of it from a different angle. So there must just be a very large ring artifact at this spot in the scan. Z7000, so we're actually just about done with, I think scroll 4 is only like 9,800 tall, and a huge chunk of it towards the top is just destroyed, and the bottom, so there probably isn't segmentations out there. Like, what is this little guy doing right here? Just hanging out. Does it go through a sheet? No. It doesn't. Okay. I think what'll happen is now tomorrow, what was my plan? Ink annotation. Well, I might stick with that actually, even though I'm going to be a day behind on my traces. I might just stick with ink annotation for tomorrow. I've wanted to create some 3D ink labels for a while, and then I have some old 3D ink labels that I created like 2 years ago that I've wanted to run a training on for a long time now, and I've just never gotten around to it. When I made them, I didn't know how to do any machine learning, and so I just kind of like threw them out there. That's how I started in the competition, was just doing annotation work, trying to mark letters and then throwing them out there for people to use. And I never, at that stage, learned how to do it, and then I started to learn how to do ink annotation, or how to do machine learning, towards the end of 2023, but by then the guy I teamed up with already had like a huge amount of labels, so we just used his. So I've never ran anything on any of the labels I've created. I'm not sure if other people have. At least any of the labels that I annotated. I made a lot of labels or changes to labels that we ran during our GP submission, but they were not ones that I manually like hand annotated. Look how sparkly that spot is there. It's like glittery. What the heck is that? That bottom right corner is out. Yeah. Now look at this spot. This part of the scroll has all kind of stuff like that. I just wonder what all that is. It shows up every once in a while in all the scans, but like this is a spot that it is really, really dense in. Somehow I keep turning my headset off. Going to stick around for a little while longer yet. I'm going to try to just finish this scroll 4 quick before I do anything else. That way I can just call it complete. Yep, see you later, man. that's 4, 320, 132. So we're making progress. Let me just check quick. I don't remember how many scroll 3 grids I have. So I've got, what, 657. And I'm just checking how many of my scroll 3 ones are done. What did I set as the output path for this is the question. S3, 59. I should have. Strange. Why is that in my trash? No, it's a good thing I checked this because I might have accidentally deleted it and been writing my scroll 3 inference to the trash bin. Well, actually writing it to nowhere. How did I do that? Let's see if my new one's coming in then. That wouldn't be very fun if that were the case. Well, whatever, I'll figure it out after this. I want to finish this before I do anything else. Just about done with this one. Then I gotta upload it. I gotta figure out how to get into our YouTube account so I can get those on YouTube. That'll make it a little easier if people want to watch them who weren't here, because having to download an MP4 is kind of a silly way to have to watch a video. And also I can't share it anywhere. I don't know if anyone will actually watch them, but they'll be there. Touch. No. We're up to 9,000 now, so we're nearing the end of the line for scroll 4 data. Yeah, that one ain't gonna work. Every single one of them that I see now, I'm like one sheet away from being able to add it. And I also need to watch out for, as I get higher in the Z levels, some of the segmentations, some of them end lower than other ones. And so if I'm not careful, I can add one that is missing a sheet, which I didn't really have to worry about for a large portion of it because the sheets went for most of the Z levels, they're at the same min and max, but I don't believe that's the case for all of them. This happens, what I was just describing, where one of the sheets ends and you don't realize it, so you've got like all of these done, but say like there was a segment right here. That happened to me a few times in scroll 1, where I didn't realize that as I was marking these or picking ones, that like there's some wraps in scroll 1 that are only in the scroll 1 grand prize region that are only they're only segmented for like a not very short, but like a relatively short period of time, at least in relation to the rest of the banner. And so if you're not careful, you end up choosing a bunch of these that have missing sheets, and I don't want to include those. Almost there. I'm glad this size should be big enough that I don't ever have to make larger ones. Not until we have scrolls where I can just take like a crop of the middle couple thousand, and they're well segmented enough where I can just kind of crop a square out around the middle and get my labels that way instead of having to inspect every single one of them. Hopefully we can get our auto segmentation to a spot where it's pretty good for a huge number. I think soon enough. I don't think we're that far off for at least a couple scrolls. I'm hoping this is one of them. Right now my script is just tabbing through every Y block and then stepping through them by every X block and checking if they have labels in them. So if you see me just like sitting here for a little bit, that's what's going on. I'm just waiting for that to find a block that I can iterate through. It blocks the UI, so I can't do anything while it does that, but it doesn't take super long, so I've never like really cared to write it up so it can do that asynchronously, because it just doesn't really affect it that much. I'm so close to being out of room though. Yeah, look at the back of that one. I mean, come on. That just looks like, it looks just like Crackle. I mean, exactly like it. I know it isn't, but the reason these exist too, by the way, if you see me looking at these like lines like this, is because when you create a segment in Volume Cartographer, you can't just like, it has to be the same length all the way through. And so as the person who's segmenting gets towards the top of the scroll and it breaks apart, and the scroll at this height is like a C almost, like this, and so they've got to keep that wrap going. You can't like stop wrapping, and so they just carry it through kind of up into space. So you get a lot of these. This is a big reason why I have to look at the labels, because if I don't, I'll be teaching the model all kinds of bad things. Like, I don't want it to do that. Yeah, I think we're out of room here. Yep, no more patches available. Okay, perfect. We finished scroll 4. So I have now, well, we didn't finish scroll 4, but we finished proofreading the scroll 4 labels. 153 from scroll 4 and 343 from scroll 1. I need to rename this folder now. And then put these 3 together. Oh no, not like that. I need to move these. There. Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna take off, go get something to eat. Nice seeing you guys. I'll be back on tomorrow at 3 p.m. to 4:30 CST. So that's Central Standard Time. All right, bye everyone.